Good evening. I felt it'd be easier doing it like this rather than fielding call after call and message after message. Thank you very, very much for all of you who've reached out to me and contacted me and passed on your well wishes and your concerns and your offers for help. I'm grateful. I think this week, even though I spent 3 hours on Sunday night, I hadn't realised what would follow from what took place. It appears that the malicious blogger and proven liar Neil Wilby is continuing his campaign of harassment and intimidation. Apparently it's the beginning of the end, and I'd been banned off Facebook and I'd been taken off Facebook, and I've been reported to YouTube now, where I share my transmissions. I find it bizarre that a so-called journalist is so keen to censor my voice and stop me from sharing what I am sharing. I find it troubling. I shared with you on Sunday a number of worrying responses from Greater Manchester Police, specifically Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine. Now, Kenny Blaine first came to my attention in this way when I reported a list of crimes, and I considered them to be crimes, a list of crimes, and first and foremost was the sale of Glodic baths. Now, we know, regardless of what Kenny Blaine suggests, the Freedom of Information records, all the council's own documents prove that the council sold Glodic baths days before an election during Purdah. The council's own documents prove that. And the paper trail goes back, and it shows that the deputy leader of the council now, who was at the time a candidate in the election, the Labour Party candidate in the election, Arud Shah, had already declared a prejudicial interest with the organisation who bought Glodic baths. The Ghazali Trust bought Glodic baths for a measly £75,000. And the sale was forced through in the lead up to the election. The Ghazali Trust had already declared how powerful they were in the community. You don't have to take my word or my interpretation for it, and it doesn't matter what Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine claims. This, in 2016, the local elections, the council attempted to rig an election. I say this with sincerity, I say this with honesty, and actually I say this with reluctance. I've spent parts of my life working in places where democracy is an irrelevance, and I've seen the consequences of that. I never thought I'd see it in my own town, where a council was involved in attempting to rig an election, because that's what the sale of a public asset days before an election is, to an organisation who the candidate has a declared interest with, and the organisation also promotes how powerful they are in the community. Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine has attempted to quash this investigation, just as he quashed the investigation into Sean Fielding. Multiple victims, respected victims, contacted the police, and Kenny Blaine sat on it. And what Kenny Blaine did was refused to interview any of the witnesses, refused to interview Sean Fielding or anyone at the council, and then sat on it for months and months, and then said it hadn't reached the threshold to be passed on to the CPS. It is another blatant cover-up. And then what this man did was he also wrote to Debbie Cole after Debbie had gone to the police pleading for help. This is a woman who had been threatened with kidnap and rape. Debbie Cole has had to flee for her life. Kenny Blaine wrote back to her, said there was nothing to see here, and made reference to himself as the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper of what? I'm not quite sure, but he described himself as the gatekeeper. Kenny Blaine wrote to me last week with a series of, in an email, I think it was 4, 5, 6 months maybe. I'd gone to him beforehand. And I knew what I was going to get, but even though I got it, it surprised me, it shocked me. And in the end, one of the things he came back to me with was that he had decided not to even interview Neil Wilby and his sidekick Ewan Stewart. And both Neil Wilby and Ewan Stewart had been involved in a malicious, hate-filled, fueled campaign where they had both fabricated this entire backstory that somehow I was a police informant, a narc, a snitch, a roof. Every acronym you can imagine for someone who supplies the police with intelligence so they can go out and arrest drug dealers or underworld figures, and somehow I was this police informant. Now I'll share with you towards the end the content of what D.I. Blaine shared with me, and you can decide for yourself how honest this police officer is, how capable this police officer is, or whether you agree with me that this police officer is actually corrupt. I, throughout the last 2 years, have been extremely passionate about the safety and safeguarding of children in my town. And then what emerged as a subsequent deep-rooted level of corruption. And for reasons only known to him, Neil Wilby, Ewan Stewart, and a number of others have decided to target me. Now, I am a law-abiding citizen, regardless of what they might say and the fakery and the lies that they've spread about me. I am not a convicted criminal. And the one time where I was questioned under caution, voluntarily attending a police station, it later emerged that the MP Debbie Abrahams, who had gone to the police station with a dossier of evidence, had doctored the evidence in an attempt to incriminate me. When my solicitor and I pointed this out, the interview quickly ended, though I had to wait months before I got a letter confirming that the matter was over and I would be facing no criminal charges. I had not broken the law. I did not break the law. I am a law-abiding citizen. If I was like any of these people who are behaving the way they are towards me, as a consequence of what I've found out today, I would be round the house of the person who has threatened me and my family, and I'd be dragging him out of his door and smashing his head in the street. But I'm not that sort of person. I believe in democracy, and I believe in the rule of law. I am just astonished that in the 21st century, in this day and age, in Greater Manchester, we would see the level of police corruption that we are witnessing. Let me show you. This account, UPSDGMP, is Neil Wilby's account. It's well known to be Neil Wilby's account. There's no ambiguity there. He admits it's his account. He can be often found talking to himself. And you can see he's tagged in Ewan Stewart and 42 others. He starts off by claiming that somehow I'm involved in an inside job engineered where a pig's head was thrown through Kaiser Raymond's window. Widely believed. Complete fabrication, complete lie. No one has ever accused me of anything of the sort. Here's a picture of me in my late 20s, early 30s, I think. Again, Neil Wilby. Which leads us to the other persistent rumour. Do you see? Persistent rumour dating back years. That Raja Mia is a police narc. Apparently what I do is far worse than which Irish Imi was convicted. So there is no doubt Irish Imi is a convicted heroin dealer. Irish Imi drove Dale Cregan away from the scene of one murder to a place where we could plan and regroup and commit another 2 murders, 2 police women in our town. I'm not sure where that parallel comes from. But the other persistent rumour, according to this man, dating back years. Again, complete fabrication. Complete fabrication. Ewan Stewart tag teams with him. This man is from Didsbury. Wilby's from somewhere in Huddersfield. Neither have any role in our town. As posted by others elsewhere, there's a strong possibility that is in fact Mr. Mia that has the protection of local police on account of him allegedly being a police informant. Eliza Jane asked him, who are the others elsewhere? There has to be another reason why this man has seemingly immunity from prosecution. The suggestion is clear. I am a police informant. Here he is claiming I've dobbed in Kaiser Raymond. I don't know any criminality Kaiser Raymond is involved in. If at all he's involved in any criminality, not to my knowledge. So I'm not sure why or what I would dob him in for. But again, you can see the term dob him in and what that means. I'm a police informant. You will see at the top in both of these quotes, old race bikes. Neil Wilby is replying to a guy called Old Race Bikes and 9 others. Again, Old Race Bikes and 9 others. The man from Mosley has grassed up Kaiser Raymond. Grassed up, again. Suggest, implies, it's clear, based upon his previous quotes, tweets, that I am a narc, a police informant. I ask you yet again, he's asking a police officer. Strong suspicion is Raja Mia has a roof. That means someone who protects me in the police. Police informants have roofs. Shocking though the harassment has been for the principals involved, that horror has been matched by the complete inaction by Q Division of Greater Manchester Police, who appear to operate in terror of or in tandem with Raja Mia. I have my own well-developed theory about that. You've all seen what his own well-developed theory is. It's that I am a police informant, a narc, a snitch. Apparently I belong to a coordinated group of agitators led by Mia and a racist far-right Twitter account Oldham I. How Raja Mia can be allowed to continuously pump out his divisive narrative simply beggars belief. Apparently, I'm proven beyond any doubt to be a persistent, mendacious liar by repeating reference to facts and evidence, not bias. I re-released the document this morning that comprehensively evidences the sale of Glodic baths was unlawful and it was an attempt by the council to rig an election. I'm happy to stand in court and defend that position to a judge or a jury, and I am convinced that they will agree with me. Here's Jim McMahon directly engaging with Neil Wilby. Remember, Neil Wilby is a proven liar and a malicious blogger, as described by a High Court judge. The list of new accounts. Everyone knows I don't work behind fake accounts. Nor am I orchestrating anything, Jim McMahon. McMahon refuses to comment on his involvement in using the funeral of Lee Rigby to cover up news of grooming gangs, as he now also refuses to comment on what he knew about the cover-up of child abuse at Failsworth School. And the grooming gangs that I'm supposed to have fabricated. The council have their own dossier of evidence where all of this was reported. Victim after victim has gone to the police in the past, and there's a folder after folder. And we found out last week that the police themselves have had to launch a new unit and have already identified the best part of 900 members of the grooming gangs. Wilby, in his latest article, beginning of the end or something that people have repeatedly sent me, and I struggle, I apologise, I struggle with his articles. I've asked my friends not to send them me. And I know all of you are concerned, but they're deeply painful, they're deeply hateful, and I am at a loss at what I can do about this man and those who have gathered round him. But in his latest article, and I think Paul Boots-Erock sent it me not long ago, apparently my MBE is being taken away from me, or he suggests that my MBE is about to be taken away from me. And he has a link in his article. The link in his article only takes you to a government page, but you'd have to click that link to work that out. This divisive, hate-filled narrative that I'm supposed to be perpetuating, orchestrating, leading. The MBE I got was for services to my country of building and strengthening communities, particularly in terms of protecting children and young people. People can take that away from me if they want. It makes no difference to me. Twitter accepted that Neil Wilby's comments violated the rules on abuse and harassment multiple times. Wilby's perpetuating this thing that I've been taken off Facebook, by the way. You can see I've not been taken off Facebook, and he's also perpetuating this thing I've been reported to Google for YouTube, because apparently they want to take me off YouTube because of what I do on YouTube. This is what was contained in the response from Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine. He acknowledges that the evidence shows, because I submitted a dossier of evidence, that Wilby and Stewart have referenced me as a police informant using words such as narc, snitch, police informant. Wilby has also posted comments suggesting you had a roof, providing you with immunity. Apparently, according to Detective Inspector Kenny Blame, because I have openly referenced contacts I have within the police service throughout my time, that this could be somehow construed as making what Wilby says true. Now I do not hide, nor will I hide. I have friends of mine who are police officers. And from the best part of 30 years of public service, I have sat in rooms with police officers of all ranks. In a past life, I even worked with Cressida Dick. I sat in the same room as her on a government committee. Detective Inspector Kenny Blame, without speaking to either of these people, claims the comments are not grossly offensive, nor are they a threat. Senior police officers have told me themselves that being referred to as a police informant, a snitch, a narc, having a roof in the police that protects me from immunity, these terms do in fact place my life at risk. Police officers themselves do not even know who police informants are. They are protected in such a way. Because if any news got out of who was or was not a police informant, then the gangsters would come after them. But Detective Inspector Blaine has decided that this is not the case and that these comments are not grossly offensive, nor are they a threat. This is where the Detective Inspector does his peers a complete disservice. This is where he demonstrates why so many police officers are leaving the police force and why Greater Manchester Police is in special measures. According to him, the term informant and other similar references in the post can be interpreted differently depending on how you view them. Someone who contacts the police in any overt capacity could be classed as a police informant. What that means is if I report a crime to the police, I could be classed as a police informant. Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine is talking absolute nonsense. And there is not a single police officer who is watching this who will come to any other conclusion. The term informant can be interpreted differently depending on how you view it. He is attempting to cover up for Wilby and Ewan Stewart. And he refuses to send it to the CPS because he does not believe that proving this case to the evidential standard required is achievable on the evidence available. As he has done before, Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine has refused and failed to interview either of the suspects. So Wilby and Stewart have not been asked what they meant by describing me as a police informant, a narc, a roof, a snitch, someone who dobs people in, a grass. And instead, Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine has come to his own conclusion of what this term might mean so that he can avoid the investigation. Once again, I am a law-abiding citizen. I believe in the rule of law, and all of you who have followed me for the last 2 years will know that I've been asking for all of you, or more of you, to exercise your democratic duty and vote. That's all I've been doing. And they want to silence me. And now, Neil Wilby and Ewan Stewart are protected by Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine. The same Kenny Blaine that protected Sean Fielding, and the same Kenny Blaine that ignored the plea for help from Debbie Barrett Cole, and the same Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine that has made his own version of reality around the corrupt, unlawful sale of Glodic baths during Purdah. It's comparable to a speeding fine. You were doing 150 miles an hour on the motorway. It's as simple as that. And that's what happened with Glodic baths. They sold a building at a date and time when it was unlawful to do so, at a knockdown discount price to an organisation who had the means and ability to influence voters, and who also had a declared relationship with one of the candidates. That is unlawful. That is a council rigging an election. Do you see why they want to take me off? I've got a few other posts to show you. Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. As a consequence of being referenced as a police narc and a police informant, and multiple police officers telling me of the dangers of such an allegation that Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine refuses to accept as a threat, but others in the police force are very clear it is. You'll remember Neil Wilby tagging in a Twitter handle called Old Race Bikes. This is Old Race Bikes' Twitter handle. That is my front door to where I live, keeping watch. They are directing gangsters to come and kill me. The police are sat on their hands watching, encouraging gangsters who have been told by journalists that I am a narc, a snitch. They've tagged in this account, and what this account has done is put a picture up of my front door with a tag underneath saying keeping watch. Rusty Wheels and Councillor Sean Fielding have a clear relationship. So you've got a councillor, the leader of Oldham Council, directly, and he's linked to, Sean Fielding is linked, openly endorsed, engaged with Neil Wilby. He is also openly involved and engaged with this old rusty wheels, or old race wheels, or whatever it's called, old race bikes. So here you have the leader of Oldham Council openly engaged with a malicious blogger and proven liar, the same as Sean Fielding, the MP for the town, openly involved and engaged with this man, who has called me a snitch, a narc, a police officer who believes that there may be other explanations as to what that term means. And then, black and white, the common denominator, old race spikes, Sean Fielding and Wilby all connected together, and old race spikes is putting up pictures of my front door. Just let that sink in for a moment. The MP for this town, Shadow Cabinet Minister for Transport, Keir Starmer's Shadow Cabinet Minister for Transport, is engaged with a man who is attempting to direct gangsters to come and kill me. The leader of Oldham Council, Sean Fielding, is engaged and promoting this man. He even name-checked him at a council meeting. Both Wilby and Sean Fielding are directly linked to this old race bikes account. And this account has put up a picture of my front door. The police are a disgrace, and the consequence of the actions of Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine is that I sleep with a knife in my bed and a knife beside my front door. I genuinely fear that someone is going to get hurt. I genuinely fear that someone is going to get killed. Because I, like anyone else who has a young family, will do whatever I need to protect those that I love. The leader of Oldham Council, the MP, multiple other politicians, Labour politicians, have all been encouraging Wilby. And now one of their other associates puts up a picture of my front door. And Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine would have you all believe that being referenced to as a narc, a police informant, and all of these other terms does not place my life at risk. How would Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine like it, and I don't know him well enough, if he had children and I went and took pictures of his kids and put them on and said, this is the school that Kenny Blaine's children go to? I'd expect to be arrested, and rightly so. Now, a number of you have contacted me with the name of old race bikes. We know who Rusty Wheel is. We know where he works. Within the next 24 hours, it is likely that I will know where he lives. Once again, my plea to Greater Manchester Police is to do your job, arrest Sean Fielding, investigate the rigged election, interview Neil Wilby and Ewan Stewart, and put an end to this nonsense that somehow I am a police informant, because the consequences are If the police don't protect me, I will have to protect myself. Thank you, Denise. Thank you to all of you. If I seem quieter than usual, it's because I'm genuinely in shock. After repeatedly implying that it's a well-known rumour, a long-established rumour, that I'm a police narc, emboldened by the active support of Fielding and McMahon. One of their other mates has come along and posted a picture of my front door. How am I supposed to take this, keeping watch? Truth or consequences? How am I supposed to interpret this, if not a death threat? Their attempts to silence me will continue, and I genuinely do not believe I will be alive to see the end of where we end up and our town being reclaimed. The government know what's taking place in Oldham. The Labour Party know what's taking place in Oldham. And I honestly feel it'll take a murder before anyone pays any attention.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Good evening. Sunday the 28th of March. Thank you very, very much for joining me, and thank you for taking the time to watch the earlier transmission from the middle of the week. I'm sure many of you will be equally, still as shocked as I am as to what came out. Thank you to all of you who've been in touch, and I'm sorry if I've not managed to get back to so many of you. I spent the last couple of days actually away from my house, if the truth be told. I had my daughter with me, and it wasn't possible for her to stay with me here with the current situation. So it's been problematic, I think, is the way, the sort of conservative way I can describe it. Okay, let me go through what we do. So this is a community-sponsored transmission. This is only possible. The Recusant 9 transmissions are only possible because you make it so I will keep going for as long as I can. I think that's pretty clear to all of you. I do need your help. I do need financial help, and I'm grateful to all of you who give me your £2, your £5, your £10. I'm grateful to all of you who've given me money to add security features to my apartment. I've got a friend, I think I've got Ali Akbar coming next week to fit a whole host of equipment that you guys have kindly helped me buy. I'm overwhelmed by how I've been supported by you guys. So I'm really, really grateful. You've seen that transmission, and I wanted to play it again because I think it's a watershed moment. It's a watershed moment in this town. The actions of Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine. Many of us for a long time have suspected that for this level of corruption to exist in this town, there needs to be individuals within the police force that are complicit within what's took place. And I challenge anyone in the police to look at what Kenny Blaine, Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine, has had to say, and defend it in any way, shape or form. I watched the last of it played back whilst I was drinking my cup of Vimto, and I'm genuinely flabbergasted by a whole range of elements in it. But the one bit that really got to me, and I'll put it on now. I'll just put it on the screen so you can see it, and let me try and explain it. The one bit that got to me is this: I am aware that you have openly referenced contacts you have within the police service throughout your time you have been presenting your information. Okay, the issue with that, the genuine issue with that is, let me just put myself, oh no, not that way. Sorry, just bear with me. I should have done this beforehand. Now, the genuine issue I've got with this, forget that. The genuine issue I've got with this is I don't think DI Kenny Blaine quite understands the context of what he's just said there. I am aware that you have openly referenced contacts you have within the police. The issue with that is somehow Kenny Blaine is insinuating that because I openly champion the police, I openly reference that though I grew up in the ghetto, though I am black and ethnic minority, that I am a Muslim, that somehow I shouldn't be referencing my positive appreciation of the police, and when I have, it's been used against me. The problem with that, D.I. Kenny Blaine, is if people like me from the background I am from do not promote the police, do not promote the law, the rule of law, then it feeds that negative narrative that the police cannot be trusted and that black people, Asian people will find no justice. And that undercurrent whips up all of that animosity where people from my background look at the police and see them as the enemy. And it's a toxic relationship that is a major issue in communities across our country. And I'd like to think that by openly referencing police officers that are friends of mine, by referencing that I grew up with young people who now went on to be police officers, or I trained young people who are police officers, or have sat in rooms and had meetings with police officers and exchanged banter and had a coffee with them, by humanizing the police, I am now somehow a police informant. I find the more I look at it, the more I struggle with this policeman's position. Now, the police, my friend Nicola was on the phone with me, I think it was on Friday. We were talking about kids going back to school. Her two daughters are back in school and mine's back in school. So we're just talking about kids being back in school and how they're coping and things that normal parents do with each other. And my buzzer went, and it was the police. It was a police officer from Tameside, and he wanted to come in. And of course I refused to let him in. I completely refused to let him in. And we had an exchange over the intercom. And I did giggle to myself because in his defence, he tried to separate the police from Oldham from the police from Tameside. He told me he was actually from Tameside and he had nothing to do with Oldham police, which I found interesting because it's indefensible. What Oldham police station, what Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine has done, and not just to me, what he's done to Mark Wilkinson, what he's done to his daughter, what he's done to Moyeb, what he's done to Jane Barker, what he's done to Paul Errock, and most of all, what he's done to Debbie Barrett Cole, a woman who's had to flee for her life after being threatened with kidnap and rape by people who are capable of kidnapping and raping, because that's what they've already done. The election night picture that Oldham Eye puts out regularly of Arood Shah next to Zia Hussein, a man, both of them wearing the red Labour rosettes. This man was convicted for kidnap, sexual abuse and torture. That's who these people are. I spoke to Debbie earlier on in the week and I took myself off Facebook. The account's still there. I'm not banned. In fact, I'll put this up because I see they're celebrating. They seem to, it's like the witch sort of thing. But there you go. They're constantly reporting my posts. And my posts are constantly being put back up. But I'm tired of it. If I'm honest with you, I am increasingly tired of it. And they time them. So they time these things on a Thursday or a Friday, hoping to disrupt the broadcast on the Sunday evening. And those of you who follow this silliness will have seen how Councillor Shahid Mushtaq's brother Tahir Mushtaq will be, and their associates celebrate every time they think they've managed to attack me, and it's not funny. What they're doing isn't funny. What they're doing has placed my life at risk. A long-standing rumour that I'm a police informant. I'm a narc. Now, to the police officer who came and knocked on my door and the constant phone calls, and I know you're all watching, so this is what I have to say to you. Engage with me in a respectful manner, and I will have a conversation with you. When you phone me, repeatedly, please leave a message with a phone number of who you are and who to call back. And like everyone who is watching this on the side here, I'm a rational, professional bloke. I know how to conduct myself in a public space. I'll take your message, I'll write your number down and your name, and I'll give you a call back, and we will have a conversation. But the conversation has to have context. You're not coming into my house just to come and have a look to see where I might have my knife stashed, or my claw hammer, or something else. You can come and talk to me once you agree that what has taken place is outrageous and out of order, and someone's higher up than the corrupt Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine has picked up on this and is reopening and looking at this again. Or else what is it you want to talk about? You're not going to give me the protection you gave Sean Fielding's girlfriend from a disabled grandmother with a megaphone who identified herself and Facebook lived her protest outside the leader of the council's house. The council isn't going to take Sean Fielding to court with a cease and desist order or whatever it was. The police aren't going to put 3 vans outside my house with cameras. I find it ominous that after I exposed Rusty Wheels or Old Race Bikes or whatever it's called, that the account went offline and disappeared. There are only 2 outcomes from this. 1, he's got scared and he's trying to backtrack and hide who he is. Or 2, and in the world I come from, the second option is what normally happens when these accounts go dead, is that an imminent attack is due. The police know this. The police know how these people, these terrorists work, and because this is what this guy is. He's a terrorist. Now, the brief conversation I had with the sergeant from Tameside over the intercom, he kind of suggested that it's difficult for them to find out who these people are. Again, unfortunately, the police take me for a fool and take the people of my town for a fool. Because ordinarily, when you investigate such people, and I've sat in rooms and watched it done, again in a different context when we're finding terrorists and extremists, when someone with a fake account who is inciting hatred and violence and terrorism and murder of others, and we want to get to find out who they are, we start by engaging with, questioning those that they have been in dialogue with that we do know who they are. So we know Rusty Wheels has been engaging with Ewan Stewart, has been engaging with Neil Wilby, has been engaging with Sean Fielding. I put up the exchange of Rusty Wheels and Sean Fielding having a chat to each other. Rusty Wheels is even in a chat with Sean Fielding's girlfriend, Sophie Hallworth. What needs to happen, what would ordinarily happen, is that the police would go and interview these people. But that hasn't happened, it won't happen, and it's not the fault of the policeman who knocked on my door. I genuinely got the impression the sergeant was concerned from Tameside. But he also understood that as concerned as he is, and as concerned as some of his peers are in the police force, their hands are tied because they are prevented from investigating, because Andy Burnham is in charge of the police, and this trail directly leads to senior politicians in the Labour Party. I really feel for the honest, hard-working police officers, Julian. I think we all do. I think we all can see it. When senior police officers, decorated police officers come out and accuse the police of being, of the mayor, the man in charge of the police, of being a corrupt liar. That's what's happened. Andy Burnham has been accused of being a corrupt liar by senior, decorated police officers. Unfortunately, Greater Manchester is a gangster-led town, city, region, whatever you want to frame it as. And the police are controlled by the politicians to do their bidding. I can't imagine a single frontline police officer enjoying their job right now. And no wonder Greater Manchester Police is in special measures. So you're not going to get me shouting and ranting at the police, because that's what DI Kenny Blaine wants, and those like him want. They want black people like me to see the police as the enemy, and so the police can see black people like me as the enemy. They want that them and us narrative in the same way the politicians they work for want the same narrative that divides you from me. And so no, I'm not at all embarrassed, or nor will I hide that I have friends in the police force, and that have trained and supported young people who've joined the police force, or that have sat in meetings and worked alongside senior police officers. But to translate that and twist that into describing me as a police informant, and thereby Neil Wilby was right, without even speaking to Wilby or Ewan Stewart, D.I. Blaine, D.I. Kenny Blaine, and I don't know his number, I've seen Paul put it up, and I'm really, really grateful to the Proud of Oldham and Saddleworth team, because they've gone for it. They've not hidden. They've not done what the Lib Dems have done, or even the Tories have done. They've called it out as they see it. This is a case of police corruption. And because we are on the front line, we know what the people are, and you'll find out towards the end of this transmission tonight, as if there was any doubt whatsoever it'd be finished. We know what they are. I know Mark's joined in today. I'm really, really sorry this guy's now gone after you, Mark. It's really interesting what he's doing. So this is Neil Wilby again, and he's using his USPD. So this is his police corruption sort of account. What has this man got to do with my town, with our town, and the politics in our town? He's now trying to criticise Mark for standing against Wilby, for standing against Sean Fielding. You see? What's it got to do with him? Well, we know what it's got to do with him. His link to Oldham is through Gail Granger. Gail Granger. Neil Wilby's link to Oldham is via Gail Granger. It's not via Arood Shah. I challenge Arood Shah to endorse Neil Wilby and what he's been doing. Oh, sorry, so that thing works. I didn't know that worked. Someone's bought me coffees, so thank you very, very much, Paul and Jill. So you can see what these people are. Wilby's link is through Gail Granger, Gail Hadfield Granger. Gail Hadfield Granger is a friend of Wilby's, is a friend of Irish Immy's. Wilby's link to Oldham is to try and deflect away from the corruption I have been exposing in my town. Because let's face it, let's go back to the beginning and what all of this is about. Let's go back to the beginning and what all of this is about. How can I be a liar on child abuse in this town and the cover-up of the grooming and the gang rape of our town's children? Andy Burnham's own investigation that was due to be completed last November has now been delayed until the middle of next year. If there was nothing to see, that would not have happened, would it? It would have been the end of it. Now, I believe they've delayed it to try and give Sean Fielding every chance of winning an election. And the findings are damning. I also believe that the reason Wilby is doing what he's doing with Gail Granger and Irish me is because I've demonstrated the clear links between organised crime and those that run this town. The fact that, and fact is a word, the fact that Arooj Shah stood in the council chamber and lied about what I'd said about her, twisted it, lied. The facts are there, what I said, and what she said was nowhere in, not at all like what I'd said. But put that to one side, put me to one side. She declared her loyalty to gangsters. And after declaring her loyalty to gangsters, bar Brian Hoban, the council, every councillor stood up and applauded her. And in the hours that followed, the convicted heroin dealer and getaway driver of Dale Cregan, who murdered an Oldham police officer, as well as murdering another police officer and murdering other gangsters that he was having a feud with. He went to social media, took to Facebook, and warned a number of the Asian councillors who he considered were not clapping with sufficient vigour. And the third element I brought to public attention that Neil Wilby seems to be having a problem with is the corruption in the council. The corruption in the council. You've seen the dodgy relationship between the Labour Party, Jim McMahon, and the cartels for the block postal vote. The only people left claiming this isn't true are privileged white people who have no experience of these places. Even my Asian critics have shut up on this issue because they know all about the cartels and they know all about how they control the block vote. And the dodgy deals that take place, from the fast tracking of families on the housing list, to business grants, to contracts, to the promises of political seats. Oldham Council, under Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins, the chief executive, who has specific responsibilities around elections, with the borough solicitor, Paul Entwistle, oversaw a council that attempted to rig an election. It's not even up for dispute. In fact, I'll bring it up. So you see it. This was the response to my FOI last year. They've stopped responding to my FOIs. They've stopped responding to my FOIs because on record, the council are on record admitting that they won't respond to my FOIs because of what I do with the information. So we're clear, what I do with the information is I share it with the people of my town in a manner that explains and puts into context what's took place and makes it impossible for them to claim I'm a far-right racist. Or they can claim that, but it doesn't stack up. So, Glodick Baths, they advertised it for sale over Christmas. And they only put it on the market for 4 weeks. This is your property and my property. This belongs to the public, this belongs to the people of the town. Now ignore some of the rest of it. And this is all online, so you can have it. They claimed the market value was determined by their appointed agent, the Unity Partnership. The Unity Partnership aren't an estate agent, they're not valuers. And the Unity Partnership is essentially the arm's length body of the council. Sorry, Tony, I should bring this back up. People forget who she is, Tony. Gail Granger is not the widow of Anthony Granger, who was shot dead by Greater Manchester Police in a car, where alongside him was a man who was then convicted for murder. And a gangster in the back already had bullet wounds in him from a shootout in a pub before. Gail Granger is also a member of a criminal gang. She's hidden it. It's all on the internet, and I'll do a piece on her at some point. The marketing value was by the appointing agent. £75,000. That's how much they sold the baths for, with their plot of land around it. It was a giveaway. It wasn't it's no valuation would come back for it to be at £75,000. Here is where they incriminate themselves. Apparently, they've been chatting to the Ghazali Trust about the sale since long before the election, February 26, January 16, February 16. But this is it. This is what the police said the sale was agreed beforehand. The police are wrong. The Freedom of Information request from the council confirms that the sale was completed on the 12th of April 2016. That's the council incriminating themselves. The 12th of April 2016, and you can see it was sold for £75,000. The issue is the date when Purdah commenced for the elections in 2016 was the 23rd of March 2016. So they sold Glodick Baths, not just on the deadline or just after the deadline. They sold it on the 12th of April. That is evidence of the council attempting to rig an election. And if there was any doubt, the council admit that the Ghazali Trust were potentially interested in using the building. And what the council omit from this As advised above, Councillor Shah made the council aware of the potential interest of the Ghazali Trust in the site and did not vote at cabinet meeting. The reason why she did not vote at the cabinet meeting was that she had a prejudicial interest. Otherwise, why wouldn't she vote? The only reason you don't vote in meetings is when you have a conflict of interest. So there you go. The council, this council, confirms through its own information forced out of it from a Freedom of Information Act. The council, Oldham Council, confirms from information forced out of it that it sold Glodic baths after Purder had started to an organisation with a declared association, a prejudicial interest with Councillor Arood Shah for a measly, undervalued £75,000 because they didn't value it properly. There's no way that building was, and the land is worth £75,000. It's worth much, much more. But they marketed it just for 4 weeks beforehand to try and limit who might be interested. So they weren't interested in getting maximum return for us. Oldham Council, under Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins and the Borough Solicitor Paul Bentwistle, attempted to rig an election. That's exactly it, isn't it, Harry? They think we're stupid. They absolutely think we're stupid. There's a plot of land, Harry, that was sold to Councillor Shahid Mushtaq's family, the brother of Councillor Shahid Mushtaq, where he failed to declare an interest that his brother and business partner had bought a plot of land east of Alexandra Park. There's an FOI there as well. That sale, in its own way, is equally as questionable. Land sold to the brother and business partner of a councillor, where the councillor did not declare his interest. Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins has run away. Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins should actually be questioned by the police in the same way people in Liverpool are currently being questioned by the police. The council tried to rig an election. That's what the evidence shows. The council tried to rig an election by selling a baths at a knockdown price to mates of a councillor who was up for re-election. And that organisation celebrated what the council had done to them in the lead up to the election, after boasting how powerful they were in the local community. It's called a bribe, and it's called an attempt to rig an election. Let's move on. I can do this now, I think, and you can see me a bit better. That'll do. This made the news last night. It came out last night and it's been all over the newspapers. There's a web page a young woman's put up, which has shared the testimonies of other young women who've been basically raped, sexually assaulted, sexually abused in schools across the country and universities. Most of them, unfortunately, I think that's the sad reality of this situation, or one of the sad realities of this situation, is that it has the media profile it does because the victims were white and middle class. Working class kids don't matter to these people. So whilst our girls were groomed and gang raped for generations and decades, it's just been ignored. But that doesn't mean that these young women aren't victims, and that doesn't mean these young women shouldn't get justice. Because we're not like that. We want justice for everyone, don't we? And these girls should never have had the things that have happened to them. Time after time across the country. Now the DFE has come out and warned schools could be closed over rape culture claims, like they didn't know. And if they didn't know, why didn't they know? More than 100 schools were named. Scotland Yard is reviewing. Let's hope Scotland Yard doesn't include police officers like Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine. By Sunday afternoon, more than 6,500 anonymous testimonies had been posted. A report by a commission led by the former Home Secretary Sajid Javid, published on Sunday, warned of a UK epidemic of child sex abuse. A government spokesman said, "We are very concerned by the significant number of allegations recently posted." Why have I put this up? And I'm not hiding here. You can see, people can see I've not been hiding. I've been very clear with the information I bring to you. Since Christmas, so for 3 months, 3 months give or take, I've been raising concerns of the systematic grooming and child abuse of children at Failsworth School. A school where Sean Fielding was a governor. A school where Sean Fielding is a known associate of one of the teachers who groomed and then married one of his students. Where a teacher was given a promotion and left a couple of years ago, very recently in the scheme of things, under a dark, mysterious cloud. A school where people who join me on my Sunday evening transmissions, parents, have had spoken to their own children and they've validated what took place at that school and the teachers to stay away from. A school where multiple senior Labour Party politicians were governors, including a former MP, where Jim McMahon had involvement, where Sean Fielding was also a governor, where the local authority, the council, sat on the governing body, and where at least one child with testimony and evidence was suspended and only allowed to come back to school if she agreed to stay quiet about the abuse she suffered. Where another girl was locked in a classroom and sexually assaulted by teacher after teacher after teacher. We released information of how even the local table tennis coach was involved in that school, and they omitted the school's name after he was convicted. working class girls were sexually abused at Failsworth School. The council covered it up, and the governors in the school, senior Labour Party politicians past and present, also covered it up. The barefaced liar was quick to defend himself on social media, has not issued a statement distancing himself or denying these allegations, denying this. Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins, nor any of her mates in the council have said anything. These are some of the people that ran Failsworth School. Some familiar faces. The chair of governors was the former MP until last year, David Hayes. These are working class kids, so they're ignored. The council, this council turned its lights to half light or whatever, coloured it up after the murder of Sir Everard, but refuse. And this is what they've got to say. We take all allegations of abuse very seriously. You do not, Oldham Council. You've been involved in the cover-up of grooming and gang rape of our children. You've hidden your own councillors who've been convicted of child sex abuse. Why are Oldham Council refusing to put to bed what has happened at Failsworth School? And you shouldn't go. No one should go to this multi-agency safeguarding hub. It's a sham. It's failed and repeatedly failed children in our town. It's a sham. The purpose of the multi-agency safeguarding hub is to protect the council. It's not to protect children. It's to protect the council and the partners that the council are in bed with. Yes, Paul. Not only did the police lose the DNA evidence, Paul, they also failed to interview her rapist, because the DNA evidence, Paul, would have confirmed that a sexual assault took place, that sex took place. That's what the DNA evidence would have proved or disproved. So that clearly did happen. But the police then did two other things. They refused to interview her attacker, her rapist, and then they lied to her by saying that the CPS had refused to take the case on when they hadn't even referred it to the CPS. So no, the multi-agency safeguarding hub cannot be trusted. And I don't say this just from the harrowing testimonies of young people that I've seen and read. I say this from my own interactions with the multi-agency safeguarding hub, when I went to them with concerns about the chairman of Oldham Central Mosque, who is a convicted sex offender, and the local authority designated officer said, no, this is okay. We haven't got an issue with this. When This chairman, on his own declaration at Company's House, described himself as a teacher. Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, on his own declaration at Company's House, the convicted sex offender former chairman of Oldham Central Mosque, and he's only the former chairman because of what we did. Otherwise, he would still have access to children in that place. Described himself, his profession, as a teacher. And the multi-agency safeguarding hub in Oldham had no issue with him. So I'm pleased that the DFE has warned schools could be closed over rape culture claims. And I urge the council to immediately refer this matter to the Department for Education to launch an urgent safeguarding inquiry that they have powers to do into Failsworth School. In fact, if you are a parent, or even if you are a grandparent or a resident or a former parent of anyone at Failsworth School, I urge you to phone Ofsted tomorrow morning and report Failsworth School for covering up the sexual abuse of children in that school. Let's see if working class kids matter. Yes, Amanda. Familiar faces. No, Carl, it won't end in May, Charles, and you and I both know this. There are only 20 seats up. We can't get rid of them in May. There's no point saying to people we're going to get rid of them in May. All we can do is show them that we've had enough and get rid of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's what we can't, Paul. We can't phone the Oldham helpline, Paul. We can't phone the council. We can't phone the councillors because they're all complicit in the cover-up of child abuse at Failsworth School. You know what D.I. Kenny Blaine will do? He'll hypothesise why it wasn't child abuse. Well, maybe his hand slipped up her skirt. Or what was it that the police did in generations gone? Thankfully, most police officers have moved on. But are you going to use that excuse? D.I. Kenny Blaine? Maybe the kid was asking for it. Maybe her skirt was too short. Maybe she was making a lifestyle choice. Gary, if it's been covered up in the past and nothing was done about it, the chances are yes, it's still going on. I don't say this to alarm you, Gary. Please, phone Ofsted. Phone the Department of Education. There's no point phoning your MP, Angela Rayner. Her mates were on the governing body. Sean Fielding was on the governing body. Yes, Charles, at least we could have an effective opposition. Did you see him, Charles, at that council meeting, the last council meeting? I didn't watch it. I had friends of mine phone me and said, "Are you not watching it?" I said, "No. I've got too much going on with my life at the moment and I am struggling." So no, I didn't watch it. But why is anyone surprised? The Lib Dems are in bed with the Labour Party because the Lib Dems have paedophiles of their own. The Labour-controlled council protected the Lib Dems to hide their paedophiles, and in return, the Lib Dems are clearly in a pact with the corrupt Labour council. Councillor Rod Blythe was charged, arrested, charged, trialled, convicted for child sex offences, and none of you would have known if I hadn't released it. The council knew. They must have known, because investigations would have took place into the types of access that Rod Blythe had to children through his role as a councillor. The Lib Dems would have known, regardless of what Howard Sykes says, and see how he evades the question. In fact, Mark Ince, if you see her, my offer still stands. Someone get me a placard, and I'll walk round behind Howard Sykes with a placard at where every door he knocks on, I will knock on afterwards and say that man is refusing to answer a simple question. He was mates, self-declared friend of Cyril Smith, refuses to clarify when he knew Cyril Smith was raping little boys, and he stood in the council chamber and declared his friendship to Rod Blythe after Rod Blythe had been caught by the police. And he refuses to say what he knew and when he knew. Do you not think we're owed that explanation? And why will the Conservatives not question it? Why will the Conservatives not stand up in the council chamber and say, we want to know from Howard Sykes when he knew about Councillor Rod Blythe? Why will the Conservatives not stand up in the council chamber and ask Sean Fielding about Failsworth School? This has been going on for months. It's inexcusable. And there's only one conclusion I can arrive at. They are all complicit and they're all covering up for each other. So how much more are they hiding? I'm glad you're back, mate. At least, you know, I've missed your sense of humour. I spoke to Oldham earlier, and he sounded more like his old self. He was he'd gone for a cup of tea, I think, and was still out of breath. But he's on the mend. We know Stephen Bashforth should be sacked. He's a self-confessed bootlegger. People of Royton, you have a councillor who's a self-confessed bootlegger. And they're all running around taking you for fools over the green belt thing that you know they're lying to you. And a big incinerator that Sean Fielding dodged the question and said that we've not had a planning application. He's on record already for supporting it. It's in his own council-sponsored press. He's on record for supporting the incinerator, saying we've not had a planning application yet isn't the answer people want. We want to know that you oppose it. You oppose a toxic tower, the height of the civic centre, being built in our town that poisons our children and our elderly and our families for generations to come. But the Labour Party councillors, they won't stand up and just object to it. Just say, this is not happening. I will vote against it. I didn't miss anything then, Sal, so that's brilliant. Okay. How are we doing? Okay, there's enough of you watching, so that's brilliant. We're well over 100. I can see why I can see why they are desperate to take me off. I can see why. And we believe this is a democracy and a free country and the rule of law applies. You've all seen this. A friend of mine phoned me just before I came on. I'll share the story. I won't mention her name, but I'll share the story with you. But Robert Jenrick, the community secretary, so this is the guy who's actually ordered the takeover of Liverpool Council. This is what he looks like. Said teachers should be able to appropriately show images of the prophets in class. It's a very, very brave statement from Robert Jenrick. And again, I'm not a Tory. I just criticised the local Tories in the previous segment. But it's a very, very brave statement from a politician in our country. And it's about time a politician in our country showed such bravery. Because the school has apologised and hung its teacher out to dry. He's now having calls to be sacked. And the likelihood this lad, poor lad, will have a death threat over him for the rest of his life. There'll be a fatwa declared by some jihadi with a out of control beard. The school closed and swapped to a day of remote learning. And the minister said, in a free society, we want religions to be taught to children and for children to be able to question and query them. We must see teachers protected and no one should be feeling intimidated or threatened as they go into school. Here they are. And you can see buried in there something that you need to understand, because this is not all black and white. Some parents spoke to the BBC. See, some parents won't name themselves because they're scared of what will happen to them if they name themselves. That's why it's been anonymized. Some parents who spoke to the BBC said they didn't agree with the demonstrations and found them intimidating. The BBC does itself a disservice. MEND, which helps Muslim engage with British media and politics, MEND has a very dodgy past. With clear links to a number of unsavoury characters. And then all this nonsense starts. And Baroness Warsee's trying to get herself involved and trying to reconnect with because she's fallen out with the Tories. So she's looking for a way to slap the Tories. And I ain't got an issue with Baroness Warsi. I think she tried her best and was hung out to dry in the end by the Conservatives. The problem we have is in a liberal Western democracy such as ours, we have the right to offend. We have the right to debate and discuss something, and just because someone is automatically offended by it does not mean we should not do it. And thankfully, from a purely selfish point of view, thankfully, because I'm the sort of Muslim that these bastards would stone to death, we do not live in an Islamic state. We do not live in any form of religious state. And we do not have a blasphemy laws. Now, what the teacher was doing, rightly or wrongly, is an irrelevance as far as I'm concerned, because it's a matter of opinion. I wouldn't put I wouldn't put a picture of the Prophet up, but someone else can do that. The context mattered. He put it up to promote discussion and debate around censorship and blasphemy and what should and shouldn't be allowed. Do we not want our children to develop a nuanced and sophisticated understanding of some of these issues? And the school ran away. The Labour politicians are all quiet for fear of upsetting the cartel-controlled Muslim bloc vote, as you can see. And what we have on our hands is another example of a situation where the Islamists are controlling the debate over what is and is not taught in our schools. You saw them last year in the Birmingham schools, where they objected to the single-sex teaching. And you saw what happened there. You've seen the Trojan horse stuff. And the takeover in schools, to the point where in an Oldham school, a government report showed that girls were being treated inferior to boys. At primary school. These Islamists won't stop with dictating what we can and can't teach to our children in our schools. Where does it stop? Their own parallel laws? They're advocating a parallel Islamic legal system in the UK where you can stone women to death for adultery. What? Where does it stop? I applaud the minister. I wish there was more like him who came out and said what he did. And I'm going to reread it. Community Secretary Robert Jenrick said teachers should be able to appropriately show images of the Prophet in class. How dare the school suspend this lad? It's appeasement. It's appeasement to the Islamists. It's appeasement to the jihadists. It's appeasement to those who would have no role for women in civic life unless they were covered in head to toe. And it's appeasement for the likes of Jim McMahon, who are happy to go and sit in rooms with exclusively men, Asian men, where women are excluded from political discourse. In Oldham, a school was found by a Department for Education urgent inspection, almost exclusively Pakistani Asian, Clarksfield School, where the girls were treated inferior to the boys. And to my Muslim friends who listen to me and are appalled by what I've just said, is your faith so weak? Is your faith and your belief so weak that this is what outrages you? What I'm outraged by is the concentration camps in China. If I want to put on my lens of my Muslim identity, that's what pisses me off more than some teacher in a school in Batley wanting to encourage debate and dialogue amongst his students. No. There is a battle to be fought, and we must protect our democracy and our way of life. And blasphemy laws have no part to play in that. And these people who protest at this rent-a-mob, and the far-right idiots that follow, what is just playing out in Batley is what's been playing out in Oldham for a generation, 2 generations. Because you end up with nutters, those of us rational in the middle who understand we need to find a way through this, we're scared to say anything for fear of being accused of being far right if you're white, or as these parents are in Batley, fearful of what the jihadists will do to them and their families if they don't toe the line. And here's the Guardian's take. And here we go. Let me bring it up. I've seen it. There's a reason why I put this up. First of all, Carrie Yasmin, the Imam at Makkah Mosque in Leeds, wants the protest to end whilst discussions were ongoing with the school. I don't want discussions with the school. There is nothing to discuss. We don't have blasphemy laws and this is allowed. What is to discuss? Shall we do the other? Shall we continue it? Because I know what these people want. I know what Carrie Yassin wants. Shall we continue it and have separate gender-specific schools because you want girls taught completely separately? Shall we continue it? And have music banned in schools because you believe music is haram and the devil worshipping or some nonsense, so music shouldn't be played? Shall we continue it and have art lessons where we can't draw people? Appeasement. Appeasement never wins. They'll take more and more and more and more and more. And I'm a Muslim and I'm saying this because these people aren't my sort of Muslims. And that's not because I can't grow a beard. Let me bring this back up because this is the second thing I want to show you. Here we go, sorry. Kate Green, Labour's Shadow Education Secretary. Now I've met Kate. She's an MP for somewhere in Manchester, one of the Greater Manchester MPs. She's now apparently the Shadow Education Secretary. So there's a significance in that. an implied rebuke. She praised the school's reaction to the protests. I welcome the school's swift response to this and now appeal to everyone to work together to calm the situation. The school's swift response was to hang out a teacher to dry, was to suspend him and appease the Islamists. Where does this end, people? You ready? As events were unfolding in Batley, Arood Shah and their pals at Oldham Council underlined a commitment to tackling racism and discrimination. Did they bugger? What they did was adopt the official definition of Islamophobia at the council meeting. So completely silence about the grooming and gang rape of white working class girls, because that's where racism and discrimination in this town, that's the pinch point of racism and discrimination in this town, was for fear of community relations. They ignored the grooming and gang rape of white working class girls. They've dreamt up this nonsense around Islamophobia. And I'm not saying people aren't discriminated because they are Muslim. Of course they are. Everyone is discriminated because of an aspect of their identity. It's wrong, and we should fight against all of that. But that isn't the pressing issue in Oldham, is it, Arood Shah? No. So the definition of Islamophobia will allow us as a council to identify discrimination directed at expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness, which could otherwise go unrecognised and therefore unchallenged. According to them, and the definition that they have just adopted, I am Islamophobic. Of course I'm not Islamophobic. But they want to weaponize race. And by weaponizing race, they keep you divided from me. Arood Shah thinks this definition provides the council with an extra tool to help us tackle racism. No, it's an extra weapon to oppress us. How can we tackle Islamophobia? Do you not see the contradiction and the hypocrisy? How can we let's say it's true in the way you see it, Arood Shah. How can we tackle it if we don't educate our children around it? I was banned off Facebook last year. It's one of the few times I've actually been banned. I was banned off Facebook last year for a couple of days. And it's because I put a Nazi emblem on with a post around the Nazi emblem. I wasn't endorsing Nazism at all. I was warning of the fears of Nazism and what this symbol signified. But without that education, how do we defend people from... It's not complicated, is it? I'm not at all comfortable with the Charlie Hebdo depiction of the Prophet Muhammad with the sticks of dynamite in his, in a turban. But that person has a right to draw it And the people in our country and the children in our country should debate it, because it for a time, it was important, and it shaped discussion and debate around important issues across the world. And we want our children to explore what they think in a safe space, because if they don't do it in that school with that caring teacher, that discussion doesn't happen in a safe place, and they're exploited elsewhere. That's how white working class kids are exploited to join the far right, and that's how Muslim kids are exploited to align themselves with Al-Qaeda and all the other nutters. We want our schools to be that safe space where these discussions and dialogue takes place. And the school goes and suspends the teacher. A Labour MP endorses the suspension, and Arooj Shah says, here, hold my... She doesn't drink, I suppose. I shouldn't say anything. Hold whatever it is that Arooj Shah has in her hand. And the council pass this stupid rule where the town issue around racism and discrimination is around the grooming and gang rape of white working class girls by predominantly Pakistani men, and the uncomfortableness of the council to deal with this issue. And what they come and say is, we've got a problem with Islamophobia. That naughty man Raja Mir is picking on those Muslims. We need to pass a rule. Yeah, exactly, mate. And agreed, Susan. Because we have that right in our country, don't we? I don't like it, I can move my child somewhere else. The council have passed a motion to adopt the definition of Islamophobia in the midst of being caught up in a grooming gang crisis where the victims are white working class girls who have been groomed and gang raped by predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. And the council thinks this is what's important. My sources in the council have also told me that council staff are increasingly worried at the failure by the council to deal with the grooming gangs. And even the staff who were previously supportive of the council and believed there was some criminal far-right whipped-up racist wannabe, even they are now starting to question the council around the delayed report. Even they can see the evidence before them is more and more overwhelming. And council staff are using official means to raise questions in the council. Of course, Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins isn't there to answer those questions because she's run away. So it's left to Rebecca Boobgate Sutcliffe. Gary, what about the guy that put the teacher's name on the... I think Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine should investigate. Don't you, Gary? Come on, Kenny. Go and investigate. Go and work out why. What might have been in the guy's head who put the teacher's name on the internet as to why it was okay. Come on, Kenny. All of us are waiting. You're bent, aren't you, Blaine? You're a cover-up merchant. Gatekeeper. It's wrong, Gary. What they did in Batley is wrong to that teacher. And this rule, this adopting in Oldham of some definition of Islamophobia. It's like grabbing hold of a hair of some white girl that had been recently gang raped by a dozen Pakistani men in the town, grabbing hold of her hair and ramming it into the mud in the ground and saying, you deserve this. That's what I feel the council adopting this motion is like right now. It makes me angry because it incites racism. It encourages racism because it leaves you with that bitter taste in your mouth that you don't matter. Your children don't matter. How are we doing for time? Okay, we kind of started about 8 o'clock, didn't we? So I'll carry on. I've got lots more to get through. Oh, people ask me about this mug. My friend Pete gave it me. Pete and I used to work in the schools together. Lovely man. Left the school, set up a distillery. Ancoats Distillery, it's called. He sells gin, and this is one of his mugs. He sells hipster gin at crazy prices, but he's doing well. He's got a smile on his face all the time, but I don't drink gin, but I drink Vimps out of his mug. So for the Muslims that want to know, look, it might look like wine. No, it's Vimto. Okay, it's Let's move on. Oh, my friend Moyab's messaged me. I need to remind all of you, because I don't do this enough, and I know I don't do this enough. There's something there in front of you that says buymeacoffee.com/recusant9. I know many of you are my supporters and you regularly donate, and I don't really need you to buy me coffees, but there's many of you who watch for the first time or watch regularly, and if you can, please buy me a coffee. It keeps me going. It keeps these transmissions going, helps me keep the payments up on the equipment I use, the software and the licensing I need, contrary to... and if for no other reason, buy me a coffee because it pisses off Sean Fielding and Neil Wilby. They hate it. So if for no other reason, buy me a coffee for that and help keep these transmissions going, because I think I provide value. I think I provide value. This week, it's been one hell of a week, really. This week, in the midst of all of this, the government finally took over Liverpool Council. Even the local Labour Party supporting newspaper, front page, headline, single word, failed. Damning verdict. It's heartbreaking to see what they did with that opportunity. The Labour-run council has been at the centre of corruption allegations since its head of regeneration, Nick Kavanagh, was arrested in his fourth-floor office of the Grade 2 listed Cunard building 15 months ago. The investigation escalated in December with the arrest of Joe Anderson, the council's figurehead for 12 years, alongside 4 other men, including Derek Hatton, the 72-year-old left-wing firebrand who ran Liverpool 3 decades ago. Excuse me. I've seen what's happened in Liverpool. What happened in Oldham is worse. The corruption is worse. The corruption is more overt. The Labour Party barely said a word when the government moved in. Not even a word. There's a guy running for mayor. Yep. is a former Labour Party member who left the party 20 years ago, said he had been shocked by the lack of contrition this week from some of those leading the council over the past 5 years. Has one of them had the decency to hold their hands up and say sorry? No, they should hang their heads in shame. I think exactly the same of all of those who work in Oldham Council that have been complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in our town, of the corruption in our town. Has a single one of them had the decency to hold up their hands and say sorry? No, they're still in denial. They're not going to hang their heads in shame. They're worried too much about the pay rises they've been getting year on year. This is the bit that is more interesting. In some ways, it's been hidden. That's why I wanted to bring this. Although the focus is centred on the intervention of Whitehall commissioners, one of the most politically significant elements of the government's proposal has been overlooked. Within 2 years, only one councillor will represent each of the city's 30 wards. It could slash the number of councillors by 2/3 from 90 to 30, potentially tilting the balance of power away from Labour for years to come. It's seismic, said one town hall source. 47 councillors got suspended over militant. We could lose 60. That's right. The government have recognised that a council run, a one-party state like Liverpool, breeds corruption. The government have recognised that, and part of the plans are they're going to get rid of 2/3 of the councillors. Oldham is worse. Whatever has happened in Liverpool, Oldham is worse. In Oldham, the council tried to rig an election. In Oldham, the council hid grooming gang. They hid Shabir Ahmed, an employee of the council with access to children and vulnerable families. They hid Rod Blythe. They've been exposed for corruption. They've wrote the council leader is out of control. He's so much out of control. And it's so corrupt that he's used council letterhead again in the lead up to the election to write to every one of you about how great a job he's doing. This is blatant electioneering. And to give him his due, Lewis Quigg, the Tory chairman, not the councillor, which says its own story. Why the councillors aren't saying any of this stuff. This is a bit. Now a year in and weeks away from an election, a letter paid for by you and me arrives, saying nothing new or important that we didn't already know. It is flagrant abuse of public money and is an attempt by the Labour Council leader to bolster his and his party's image and is a blatant piece of electioneering. I will therefore ask the Chief Executive in writing to support why a letter like this was not sent months ago. But what do you expect, Lewis? What do you expect? This is a man whose re-election campaign was launched by the Oldham Times, and we now know that the local press have had the best part of £1 million from the taxpayer. This is a man whose girlfriend was featured for running for Christie's, for Maggie's in Oldham in October. So in 6 months' time, she's running a marathon and she's fundraising for Maggie. So let's focus on Sean Fielding's girlfriend rather than all the other people who do any fundraising for Maggie's. Let's launch Sean Fielding's re-election campaign and let's use public money to send out this stupid letter. There are 100,000 There are 100,000 households, or just under, in Oldham. This letter has gone out to everyone in an envelope, 2 sides, in colour, stamped. Let's say it's cost £1 per envelope. That's £100,000. Let's say it's cost 50 pence. That's £50,000. And 2 weeks ago, this council cut vital projects supporting young people, the vulnerable and elderly in this town. This council introduced a stealth tax, once again increasing the cost of school meals, hitting the lowest paid, most hardest. And he spends, how much is this cost? Somewhere between £50,000 and £100,000. Electioneering. And that's the irony, Ian. That's the irony. When we were in crisis, the £250,000 chief executive ran away on secondment. When the town was top of the COVID charts, when people were dying here more than anywhere else, when people were catching COVID here more than anywhere else, Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins, OBE, ran away on secondment. Sean Fielding said, "Here, CAROLYN, hold my drink. I'm off to Lanzarote for 2 weeks. Stuff what the Foreign Office guidance is. I'm going on 2 weeks holiday. When I've got to come back, I'll have to quarantine. But I'm going on holiday." Yeah, he went on holiday to Lanzarote for 2 weeks. Your leader, the leader of this town, went on holiday when the town needed him the most. And now he's sending a letter out with his photograph and signature and Dr. CAROLYN Wilkins' photograph and signature, who's neck deep in corruption scandals of attempting to rig an election. Well, here's another clear example of someone trying to rig an election. You know why he's took him on, Paul. I remember when I leaked the evidence. He denied it first. And those 2 well-heeled ladies suddenly put their Twitter profiles, communication officers, press officers, putting their Twitter profiles on private so no one can get in touch with them. Jenny Harvey and whatever the other one's called. They were hired to profile Sean Fielding. Because at the time, and he still has, I have no doubt, delusions that somehow he's going to use Oldham as a stepping stone to become the MP for Rochdale. Blatant electioneering. And Oldham Council, the figures already are above 100 million. Liverpool Council may have squandered up to £100 million of public money. Anyone want to wager that the figure is higher in Oldham? We know just over the last 2 years they've paid the best part of, is it £70 million in interest payments to service the debt on their failed vanity schemes, using your money and my money. £70 million in debt payments. Just interest, servicing interest. Forget repaying the debt, just servicing the interest. The best part of £70 million. Oh, I think Karen Rochdale is just as bad as Oldham. The way the cartels control Oldham, they also control Rochdale. They're also strong in Manchester, they're strong in Bolton, Thameside. If you're listening to me on YouTube, and it's only on YouTube this at the moment, please subscribe to the channel. The only way we get our numbers up and this being shared elsewhere. So if you're watching it and you're I'm looking at my screen now. If you're one of the 100 plus who are watching this on my screen right now, please subscribe to the channel. It's free. Just click that subscribe, click that like video, and it just helps with the analytics, and this is pushed out to more people. So YouTube push it out to more people. I'm sorry, Charles. £80 million documented. It's not 60. 80 million. I'm sorry, Charles. Interest payments. Just to service the debt. I'm glad something we do amuses Sean Fielding. His arrogance and the arrogance of those that control our town is something I never thought I would see. The contempt they hold for the majority working class townsfolk is staggering. They don't care about you or me or anyone like us. Oldham is a cash cow through which they get fat. And the more poor we are, the richer they get. The more divided we are, the more powerful they become. Sorry, Katie, I've not come across you before, but I'll put your post up because I think I agree with you. Like, we've got funds like this to squander on irrelevant letters. If that's an angry emoji, if it's suppose it is, you have every right to be angry. Someone should ask the council how much those letters cost. What was the total cost of those letters to send out? My rough calculations is somewhere between £50,000 and £100,000. I don't watch TV, Ian. I rarely watch TV. I rarely watch news. I rarely watch TV. My friends who know me know I read a lot. Actually, I read a lot, and I listen to music. I mean, and that's kind of it, really. I read a lot, I write a lot, and I listen to music. I don't really watch television. I do miss going to the cinema, if I'm honest with you. I used to go regularly with my friends to the cinema, and I'd see them. So most of my friends who I'd see socially at my age would be joint trips to the cinema. So I do miss that. They're just awarding themselves pay rises, aren't they, Paul? And they're just hiring more and more of their mates. That money hasn't gone on frontline staff of people who live in this town, the bin men, the cleaners, all the council services that we value. That money's not gone on that. And I bet you all the cuts that you've seen have actually been on the frontline services as well. Oldham, Chronic Oldham put a post up, and he's brilliant with his figures. That for the last decade or so, the communications team, the press teams, have seen actually no cuts whatsoever. They take us for fools, mate. They take us for fools. Gary Martin, you know the answer to that. They spend a lot of money in covering it up, mate. That's what they do. So, what am I saying? I'm saying Liverpool Council have been took over by the government because of the courage shown by the Minister Jenrick And I'm pleading to him to intervene in Oldham and take over the running of Oldham Council. It's corrupt. It protects paedophiles and sex offenders. It hides paedophiles and sex offenders amongst the council. It's rigged elections. The MP of the town is clearly exposed for his dodgy relationships with cartels and selling off public assets at discount prices. And the council decision making has been infiltrated by gangsters. My friend, a friend of mine who's currently working with the UN, phoned me just before to check in on me, because she was, like many of you, and I'm grateful to all of you who've checked in on me, and I'm sorry if I've not got back to everyone. But she got in touch with me and says, Raja, if people followed you, and if people who follow you see what you post and didn't know you, they'd think you were a loon. They think you'd gone mad. You'd had a breakdown, and these people had, and you were now, you'd gone mad. No, I've not gone mad. My eyes are wide open. And I can see things for what they are. The town is corrupt. And for a town like this to be corrupt, the councillors need to be on it. The council officers need to be in on it. The press needs to be in on it. Certain members of the community organisations need to be in on it. And the police need to be in on it. Okay, I see I've lost a few of you, and you're going to miss the main bit, I'm afraid. The ones you have lost, so I'm really sorry if I've gone on, or if you felt like I've gone on, but I'm going to have a minute's break. I'm going to come back, and I need to share with you what should be the end of a political career. Excuse me. My daughter didn't stay with me this weekend for obvious reasons, but so I'm making my way through her chocolate. So that's what I've been doing. I've been eating various small Easter eggs and stuff. So yeah. So every time I go to have a bit more vim, so that's what I do. Okay, let's get on to the serious stuff. Documented on my website through the various Welcome to Oldham series is Welcome to Oldham Part 3. Now, I'm not going to extensively go through it at all. I need you to look at it. If you need to look at it, most of you will be familiar with it. And it's to do with Arooj Shah's relationship. So that's her brother, convicted money launderer, Zia Hussain, the guy who kidnapped, tortured and sexually abused someone and part of the gang. Her dodgy ownership of Gelata's Ice Lounge. First of all, she failed to declare it and backdated the declaration with dodgy council involvement in that backdating of the declaration. She claimed she had a director non-paid role, then it was exposed she was the only director, which means that it's not possible to be a non-paid role. She owned the business. Backdated her resignation. And then when I exposed it, she endorsed my murder with this guy, Mohammed Nadeem, who offered to stop people voting, so that it was very clear what he meant by voting ever again. Qasim Lenny followed it up, making reference to me as a gay Christian convert. Again, that was to do with encouraging, enticing my murder. And all because I linked Arooj Shah to this gangster, Irish Himi, to Zia Hussain, exposed her brother's links. Look, he's out there, electioneering, campaigning with Jim McMahon and the others. They're all out together. Jim McMahon has since come out that McMahon has given this man a reference. So it's since emerged that Jim McMahon has given this man a reference. He's given a Oldham cop killer's getaway driver a reference. The reason why I'm showing you this is I want to show you this. The Manchester gangsters fleeing the country as the Enro chat hack sees criminals tracked down and locked up. So the police, the overseas police, I think it was the French and the Belgian police, cracked this messaging platform for gangsters. And criminals from Greater Manchester fleeing abroad as they feel the heat after police infiltrated their encrypted communication system. Destinations which they are thought to have headed for include Spain, Holland and Dubai. Remember, we've heard Dubai before. The exodus was triggered after police were able to read text messages as criminals plotted drugs operations, the supply of weapons, and even plotted gangland hits on rivals. The hacking of the secret Enro chat communication network during the summer was a major blow to the big-time criminals who used to deal in drugs and firearms. The story goes on. You don't need to, and you can look up Enro chat yourself. One of my uncomfortableness with Arooj Shah, and this isn't misogyny. None of this was ever misogyny. One of my uncomfortable feelings was that Arooj Shah is the parliamentary assistant for the MP Jim McMahon, the Shadow Transport Minister. Jim McMahon openly endorses Dale Cregan's getaway driver reference platform on his social media pages. Arud Shah's links to criminal underworld is celebrated in the civic centre. How that places her, how does that not put her in an untenable position in handling confidential information? I don't know. I can't see how any drugs operations or anything sensitive to the police can, either at the Labour Party national level or at a local council level, can go through her. I don't think that makes her a misogynist. I don't think she's fit to hold that office with the networks and relationships she has. What am I getting at? Here, read this. There you go, read that. This has been cross-referenced with others, so I've just had this from one place. Hello, I'm letting you know this information as you have been brave to voice your views and other people's views on what is happening in Oldham. As the elections are coming close, I am sure you would like to know the Deputy Council Leader Arud Shah's brother is wanted by the police for questioning in regards to the raids that have happened in Oldham in the last month. One of the people that are in custody had an encrypted phone where messages were found to and from Arslan Shah, Arud Shah's brother, to escape police questioning. Arslan Shah has escaped to Pakistan and is now hiding till at least after the votes. You can investigate yourself about this matter, but only a few close people to them are aware of this information, including Irish Imi. Jim McMahon and Sean Fielding will probably not know this. If you want to speak to me about this, please forward me the number and I can ring you. I mean, I've had this cross-reference. This criminal chat network was used by the most prolific gangsters across Europe. The government must intervene in Oldham. The MP, Jim McMahon, is clearly incriminated. Debbie Abrahams is clearly incriminated, both through their associations with Arud Shah and also through particularly Jim McMahon's links with a convicted heroin dealer, Irish Imi, posing for a picture with someone convicted of a killing who goes by the street name Bullet. The gangsters in Glodick delivered for Debbie Abrahams, which is how she managed to still maintain her MP position. And now it appears that Arud Shah's brother, already a convicted heroin dealer, and who she apparently let me go back, get this right. Apologies, he's not a convicted heroin dealer. That's Irish Imi. A convicted money launderer, who she passed on ownership of Gelato's Ice Lounge after she was exposed. How she passed that on and what money exchanged hands and all of that nonsense that the borough solicitor Paul Entwistle Bentwhistle helped cover up. Another reason why the council's corrupt. But it seems the brother has fled the country after being exposed in these chats with these gangsters. How can and we know the police are crooked because of the gatekeeper detective inspector Kenny Blaine. I say cartel town. I use it all the time. The phrase. What is it? Arud Shah, is your brother in Pakistan? Gangsters control Oldham. Gangsters in bed with politicians. Gangsters who are linked to senior council officers. This town is crooked. This town is bent. When you go to the police, Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine does his job as the gatekeeper. Who's he the gatekeeper for? Is it corrupt councillors or is it the gangsters? I'll put it back on the screen. This is a resignation matter. This is a serious government intervention matter. Can you see? Can you join the dots up and can you see? Maybe next week if I'm still around, I'll do a McMahon map. Can you see? Is there anyone left who can't see? Now do you see why Wilby is attacking everyone he can? Because of who's been brought in by and who these people are? Can you now see why Jim McMahon doesn't even hide that he gave Irishimi a reference? Can you see why our land, our community assets are being sold at discount prices with councillors or Asian businessmen with clear links to gangsters and criminals? Do you see why some dickhead put a picture of my front door? Do you see why Sean Fielding is openly engaged with him? Can you see why I sleep with a knife next to my bed? Where does this end? For those who don't know me, my name is Raja Mia. I am responsible for the Recusant 9 channel. Senior members of the Labour Party have endorsed my murder. Others are openly engaged with gangsters and criminals who are trying to kill me. The truth is, I'm not going away and I'm not going anywhere until we get to a place where we take control of our town. And the only way we can do that is by exposing them the way we do. And come May, voting them out, voting as many of them out as possible.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.